If you ask Wanda Cooper to describe her life these days, she'd probably use the words empty, bewildered, and inconsolable. And who could blame her? In one of a dozen interviews, she tells ABC News of June 9th, 2020, that she is still in disbelief. In disbelief that her son is no longer with us. His only crime, she uttered, was going on his routine jog. And that's all Ahmaud Arbery was doing on Sunday, February 24th of 2020, when three men who suspected Arbery in a series of break-ins in the area pursued him in their truck, armed with a .357 Magnum, and shot him dead. Wanda Cooper has to relive the pain of her son's murder every time the video is played on media outlets. We all sit back and wonder, how could something like this possibly happen? Perhaps this can explain things. Before accusing himself from the case due to a conflict of interest, District Attorney George E. Barnhill sent a letter to the Glynn County Police Department. In that letter, Barnhill came to the defense of Ahmaud's killers, saying they were acting well within their rights as Georgia citizens, citing Georgia's citizen arrest laws. According to the New York Times of May 17, 2020, citizen arrest laws had been around for quite some time, dating back to medieval Europe, when peasants were expected to assist in an arrest when it was considered appropriate. Currently, all 50 states have citizen arrest laws on the books, and about a dozen of them grant citizens an unlimited amount of latitude. The aforementioned article argues that placing the power to detain others in the hands of untrained citizens poses a great risk, not only to the arrestee, but the arrestor, and opens up the possibility for others to abuse that authority. Therefore, we must take a hard look at citizen arrest laws by first exploring what makes them so problematic to begin with, then taking a look at potential negative effects, and finally, some solutions. Because when the wrong people take the law into their own hands, for people like Ahmaud Arbery, our streets become a much more dangerous place. Vincent Darby of Virginia Beach, Virginia, needed some supplies from the Home Depot. Upon exiting the store, he was assaulted by two men who tried to detain him. They thought he fit the description of a man wanted for armed robbery in the area. The only thing the real suspect had in common with Vincent was that they were both black. This highlights the two major reasons why citizen arrest laws are so problematic. They are often misinterpreted, and they have a distinctly racist past. Initially, CNN of May 12, 2020, reports on why citizen arrest laws are so often misinterpreted and inherently confusing. While each state has them, the amount of leeway granted to citizens varies greatly from state to state, and in many cases, they contain language that is both nuanced and intentionally ambiguous. For example, in my home state of New York, citizen arrest laws allow for the use of a non-lethal force, which can mean very different things to different people, especially someone from New York. The article furthers, since there is no national standard for what constitutes a citizen's arrest, it can incite mass confusion as to what can be considered appropriate in situations like this. Next, we cannot ignore the distinctly racist past of citizen arrest laws. As documented by the History News Network of May 24, 2020, most citizen arrest laws, including that of Georgia's, were created and codified during the 1860s, when ordinary citizens were deputized in order to hunt and capture runaway slaves. Even after slavery was abolished and the 13th Amendment implemented, citizen arrest laws were used in order to enforce Jim Crow and Black Code laws. And as the week of May 7th, 2020 tells us, citizen arrest laws continue to be employed to this day in order to target and intimidate Black and brown citizens by monitoring their movements and restricting their freedoms. Militia groups along the U.S. border that hunt and detain undocumented immigrants, and the men who killed Ahmaud Arbery, give clear claim that these laws both fall and fail along racial lines. This past February, Trayvon Martin would have been 25 years old. His killer, George Zimmerman, ignored police orders and stalked Trayvon before taking his life. This illuminates just two of the major negative effects to come about because of citizen arrest laws. they promote acts of vigilante justice, and they perpetuate racial profiling. First, when citizen arrest laws are seriously abused, they can legitimize acts of vigilante justice. The Boston Globe of July 3rd, 2020 warns against those who would take the law into their own hands. The article notes, while there are many valid criticisms of current-day policing practices, the answer is not to be found in people who would act as self-appointed judge, jury, and executioner. For example, the circumstances surrounding Ahmaud Arbery's death are not unique. The New York Times of May 13th, 2020 documents a similar case of vigilante justice gone wrong, involving Hannah Payne, who is currently facing murder charges for the death of 62-year-old Kenneth Herring. Kenneth Herring was involved in a hit and run, and Payne, who was in no way part of that accident, decided to get herself involved, chasing Kenneth down in her Jeep, shooting him and killing him almost instantly, despite orders from a 911 dispatcher telling her to stand down. These instances of cowboy justice are a direct result of misguided citizen arrest laws. And secondly, one can argue that this is racial profiling taken to its logical extreme. As reported by the Fresno Bee of May 20th, 2020, a vast majority of citizen arrests occur against people of color from people outside of the community. They are done under the guise of being a public service, but make no mistake, this is racial violence. Constantly monitoring and criminalizing communities of color is the very definition of racial profiling, as per the Human Rights Commission, and citizen arrest laws give license for people to do it. The tragic killing of Ahmaud Arbery has renewed calls to radically reform how states craft their citizen arrest laws, as well as how we address systemic racism. This effort must happen on both the individual and legal levels. First, legally, states must take the nuance and guesswork out of citizen arrest laws. According to Forbes magazine of June 4th, 2020, the state of Georgia is already in the process of trying to have their citizen arrest law repealed. If this fails, however, it should not stop the fight to clarify existing laws. Moreover, the 2018 Pennsylvania Journal of Law recommends a national standard for what constitutes a citizen's arrest be put in place. While Congress can debate federal police reform, our nation's governors should form a coalition to unilaterally inform the public of what is and is not appropriate during a citizen's arrest. We should not live in a country where a legitimate citizen's arrest in one state is a case of false imprisonment in another. In addition, lawmakers should rewrite these laws so that people who abuse them can be more readily held accountable. As more and more legislation is drafted to punish those who would engage in racial profiling through the 911 system, we should include punishment for those who do it through citizen arrest laws as well. Secondly, when it comes to individual solutions, one of the best ways that individuals can help prevent these tragedies is by heeding the words of Monica Jones, senior instructor at the Fairfax County Academy of Criminal Justice, who reminds us of two very important things. We are not the police, and we might be wrong. Unless we are absolutely 100% certain that we have witnessed a crime, we have no cause to engage in others or to get law enforcement involved. This is not to say that you can't be a good neighbor or a concerned citizen, but we must be conscientious of the role we might be playing in systemic racism, police brutality, and racial profiling. Finally, use common sense and educate yourself on how social justice issues affect communities of color, as well as your state's citizen arrest law. Citizen arrest laws are just one of the many ways our broken criminal justice system harms those who are most vulnerable. Our exploration of problematic causes, effects, and solutions show that reform is imperative. To be blunt, nothing we can do or legislate will bring Ahmaud Arbery back to life or mitigate the grieving of his mother. However, we can make his story mean something and use it as a catalyst for change.